So we've looked at the rods and the reels, and we've mentioned the design to be used with braid. It's a fire line crystal here. Perhaps, Mike, you can just say what makes braid so good. I mean, many anglers now use braid, but it's worth recapping on the benefits of braid.
Well, it has several advantages. Obviously, it's a very low diameter for its breaking strain, so therefore you need less weight to get down in the tide. So again, you're fishing far more precisely. Its other key advantage is its non-stretchability. It means that all that information, as soon as a fish even plays, I tell you what, you can actually feel a pollock or a bass come up behind the lure. You can feel them pull on the tail of the lure when they're not quite sure. You're not quite sure whether it's right or wrong. You can actually feel them pull. It's that precise. And that's again where these rods come in. You know, everything's working in unison. And that's its main advantage. It feeds all this information back into the hands. Also, it works too when you're playing fish, because you don't know exactly what that fish is doing. As soon as it starts to dive, the information's back in your hands. There's no pause like you get with mono, which stretches.
Sure. Now let's look at rigs. The most common of these is the flying collar rig. Mike, do you want to just show us this flying collar rig?
Yeah, certainly. The flying collar rig is very simple, really. It's a sliding boom, lead on the bottom. You slide on a bead, you stop that bead by tying on a swivel, and then you have between 10 and 15 feet of anything from 18 to 25 pound fluorocarbon, and it ends in the lure. And the way this rig works is when it descends, the boom stands off from the line and helps to reduce tangles. It's a very effective rig, but it does have some disadvantages. Its main disadvantage is in slack tide conditions, because it needs the tide flow to keep the lure and the boom flowing away from each other. That's where you get reduction in tangles. But in slack water, you don't have that benefit. It all goes down in one lump, and it's not an effective rig. What we find now with these modern rods, we're finding a rig called the Whitby rig is far more effective and catches a lot more fish. Now the Whitby rig is very, very simple, and that's the key to all rigs, is to have them simple. And all this uses is, from the main line, you tie on a snap link, the lead goes on the snap link as normal, and all you do is you tie off about 7 or 8 feet of 18 to 25 pound fluorocarbon from the top eye, and it's as simple as that. But you work them with a weighted shad or a weighted sand eel, and that's the key to it. Using the weighted sand eel and the weighted shad means that when it drops down in the water, you can drop down at speed too, which is very important when you're working over wrecks. But because you're using the weighted shad, even if it does spiral up the line, when you stop the lead and start to retrieve, the weight of the weighted shad flows down past the lead, everything straightens out, and everything fishes correctly. It's extremely effective, like I said, particularly with these shorter sticks, these shorter rods that we're starting to use now.
Sure, a really simple, effective rig.
Very simple, effective rig,
and quick to tie.
And also, for a lot of people, it's very cheap.
Of course.
If you lose it, it's not that expensive.
So on a typical pollock fishing trip over a wreck, how would you fish the Whitby rig?
Well, we've already said that its beauty is it doesn't tangle. Right. So you can drop down rapidly. You don't have to think about it, just get it down there as fast as possible.
So if you're drifting, you can get down into the strike zone, if you like, quickly.
That's right, absolutely right. And also you maximise your time down there. You maximise your time, the lure is in the feeding zone. That's really key. So let's just set up the situation here. So you've just started the drift, the skipper will say, wreck coming up. So you want to make sure you're ready to go. As soon as he says wreck coming up, it goes straight down. You want to fish in the maximum area where the fish are. As soon as you feel your lead hit the bottom, gently start to wind. Slow pace, just slow pace. But it can be different on the day. Sometimes they want it slow, sometimes they want it fast. You have to experiment. But also you've got to think about, if it's very, very clear water conditions, play around with the length of the fluorocarbon from the swivel to the lure. Sometimes, most days, about 6 or 7 feet is enough. Some days they might want a bit more, but that's usually when it's clear. Go up to sort of 10 feet, 12 feet, doesn't matter, it won't tangle on the Whitby rig.
So also, you know, you can switch the combinations of colour of the baits to match the conditions.
A good one to think about is if it's very, very bright and you're fishing in relatively shallow water, bright colours can work very well, particularly reds and orange. But in deeper water, think about silhouette. You need a darker colour and give them maximum silhouette. It's very simple. If you look at the shape of most fish, their eyes reticulate and they can look upwards, and that's what they are. They're predators, they're ambushers. So they're looking up, and what they're looking for is silhouette. They're looking for black shadow, so give them what they want.
And you know, we're saying on a typical pollock fishing trip over a wreck, but you don't actually know what you're going to hit. Could be cod, could be bass.
That's right, you get an awful lot of bass, you know, on inshore wrecks. I mean, that's what bass love. They like structure, so they can use that structure to ambush their prey, and that's what they're doing. But it's the same for cod, it's the same for pollock, it's the same for ling, all fish that you can typically get on soft plastics.
So we've done the rods, the reels, the lines. Let's have a look at the baits and the typical soft baits that we'd use for this style of fishing.
There are literally hundreds of them, and they'll all catch fish. But certain ones always are more successful than the others. And these are some of the ones I'm using at the moment. Now this is a pulse shad. This is a particularly good lure for pollock. It's got a big paddle tail, and a pollock like vibration in a lure, and that's where this paddle tail comes in. You've got that wagging away like a dog's tail at the back, and that really turns the pollock on. And they come in different sizes, and you'd fish those on a lead head, or you can even fish these, because they've got weight in them, they're quite a dense compound material, you can actually fish those like a weighted shad on that Whitby rig. Okay. Very effective.
And what you were saying about the pollock when they're deep, when it's deep and dark, that vibration is important.
It's very important.
To also sense where the lure is.
That's right, very important.
Okay.
Another good one at the moment is the gulp alive jerk shad. These are proving very effective. What we find is that when the fish are feeding, but they're not feeding heavy, that little extra attraction that the gulp liquid gives it can make a big difference, and it genuinely can. And we found that this lure in particular is very effective. Very effective.
So you're appealing to another sense.
That's right.
Of the predator.
I found it very good on pollock and also on cod. Those are the two fish that really seem to like it. Another great soft plastic is the ripple shad. This is the one I like for bass. This is particularly effective for bass. But again, we'll take pollock and cod. But it's got the paddle tail, but it's also got ripples built into the body, and again you're getting maximum vibration as it's moving through the water. And it's also, although they're very tough and durable, it's a semi-soft compound, so there's a lot of movement in it. And that's what I've also found. A lot of people tend to look at a lure and they want to catch as many fish as they possibly can on it without it breaking up, which is fine. But what we found is a slightly softer compound. It may not last as long, but it'll catch you a lot more fish.
I think it's important to look at the ripples on here. What you actually get with that is two different vibrations. You get the faster vibration of the paddle tail doing this in the water, but obviously these give a deeper, slower vibration. So again, it's just adding attraction.
That's right, absolutely right. And another one which is proving very effective is the power bait sand eel. This is a new introduction lure, and it comes in several different sizes and colours, and you can see exactly what it is. It looks like a sand eel, and that's why it's so effective. But again, it's effective on particularly pollock and bass, but a lot of other predators will take it too.
Sure.
And it's weighted, so you use it again on the Whitby rig.
So that's just a selection of the Berkeley baits that are available. But new for this year is a power bait, power pack for targeted really at bass.
That's right. I mean, it's one that we've spent an awful lot of time on, and it really is extremely effective. I've caught a lot of bass on all these lures. You get 5 in the pack, and you've got 2 lead heads. And it's the different colours. You can mix the different colours around with the different conditions. And how you, if you have a look at it,
there we go.
That's how you fish them, with these small lead heads, with the shad on the back. And bass just go absolutely bananas for it. I've had a lot of success with them, a lot of success.
Really interesting bait.
Sure is. Well, that's a brief introduction to the Abu Revo rod range. Thanks for watching. Tight lines.
Cheers.